Debates about the historical reliability of the books contained in the New Testament, especially the Gospels, are long-standing. Historians use a wide range of tools and techniques to test the credibility of ancient documents, including the biblical accounts. One of these is archaeology. In this video, I'm going to outline 3 archaeological discoveries that support the claim that the Gospels are reliable as history. Now, it's important to note that Jesus and the events of the New Testament, while they are extremely historically significant looking back on them, were relatively obscure at the time. It's not as though Jesus was a well-known political or military leader, or even a local government official, for whom we may expect to see archaeological remains like stelae, inscriptions bearing his name, or coins, as we do for Roman emperors. Jesus was a Judean carpenter and rabbi, relatively well known in his region, but not the sort of person for whom we would expect much direct archaeological evidence. That said, direct archaeological evidence that mentions Jesus, for example, is not the only kind of archaeological evidence there is. The 3 examples that I'm going to provide are instances where archaeological discoveries have confirmed something within the Gospel accounts, in effect bolstering or supporting the claim that the Gospels are reliable or trustworthy. History is in many ways about figuring out who we can trust, kind of like a court case, whose testimony is reliable. Archaeology helps us to do this. Just one final note before we launch in. While there are many more examples, the 3 I've chosen come from John Dickson's readable and concise book on the evidence for Jesus, Is Jesus History? I'll provide a link in the description. Example 1. In John 5, we read an account of Jesus healing a lame man near a pool in Jerusalem. Now, there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool, in Aramaic called Bethesda, which has 5 roofed colonnades. In these lay a multitude of invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. What's interesting in this passage is the specific detail given about the pool. These sorts of incidental, offhand details are the sort that interest historians. They allow us to check up on how familiar the author is with the landscape and context of the narrative that they're describing, and how trustworthy their account is. If we can trust them to get the unimportant and incidental details right, it tells us that we can take them seriously as witnesses to the events that they're describing. In the case of the Jerusalem pool, we know that it's supposed to have been near the sheep gate, so archaeologists know where to start looking. For a long time, archaeologists were unable to locate any such pool, leading some to suggest that the details in John's account were made up or symbolic. But in the late 1950s and early 60s, investigators uncovered a pool that matched exactly the details in John's description, and it was exactly where John said it was. Since that time, excavations have continued, and they support the conclusion that John not only got the general context right, but he also got the finer details correct as well. To quote one New Testament scholar, "Now, after careful examination of the evidence, we see that just as the general accuracy of the Johannine account in chapter 5 was confirmed by the discovery of the pools over 50 years ago, we can now see that the details of the Johannine account are also confirmed by a closer study of the details of the pools. Our present conclusions are not a naive reading of the text, but a critical one, based on the archaeology of the site." So when John describes a pool near the sheep gate with 5 colonnades, he's not just being symbolic or making stuff up. Archaeological evidence suggests that he knows what he's talking about, and he gets the details right. Example 2. The New Testament and a range of other ancient sources claim that Pontius Pilate was the leading Roman official in Judea at the time of Jesus. Tacitus, writing in the 2nd century, calls Pilate the procurator of Judea. But as John Dickson points out, this is not strictly true. Pilate was actually a prefect or governor, holding a title that stressed the military nature of his role and his status as an equestrian. At the time, a procurator was a financial administrator within the Roman provinces, and only after about AD 40 did the term come to be used to refer to governors more broadly. While Tacitus gets the details wrong, as John Dickson highlights, the Gospels rightly call Pilate hegemon, a general Greek term for governor or prefect. This distinction was confirmed by the excavation of a stone inscription near Caesarea Maritima on the coast of Israel. It dedicates a building to the Emperor Tiberius and mentions Pontius Pilate, calling him the governor or praefectus of Judea. Again, the Gospels get the details right. Example 3. Critics have long highlighted the fact that the Gospels were originally written in Greek to undermine their claim to be reliable testimony of Jesus' life. After all, if Jesus was a thoroughly Jewish man and spoke Hebrew or Aramaic as his first language, wouldn't it be odd that the accounts written about him were written in Greek rather than Hebrew or Aramaic? And it's a fair enough question. As Dixon notes, such a basic cultural discrepancy between a figure and the writings about him would be more significant to the historian than any particular error of fact in the accounts. But here is again where archaeology has been helpful in answering these questions. Extensive archaeological work, both where Jesus was from, in Lower Galilee, and in the surrounds, has confirmed that where Jesus spent much of his time was indeed devoutly Jewish, just as the Gospels describe. That's important, but it doesn't resolve the question of why the Gospels were written in Greek. Archaeologists have uncovered extensive evidence that suggests that Greek was widely used within Israel at the time. In fact, as many as 15% of Jerusalem's population may well have spoken Greek as a first language. The excavation of a large synagogue inscription right next to the temple has shown us that Greek was so prevalent in Jesus' day that the holy city itself was catering for Jews whose preferred language was Greek. Burial inscriptions show the same thing, with ossuaries often listing both a Jewish and a Greek name. To quote Dixon again, this means that a significant portion of the population had both Aramaic and Greek as heart languages, languages they literally took to the grave. This matches the fact that the Gospels provide only the Greek names for two of Jesus' disciples, Andrew and Philip. So there is no cultural or time gap between the Jewish context within which Jesus lived and the Greek language in which the Gospels were written. And archaeology has helped us to show that. So those are the 3 archaeological discoveries that confirm the details and credibility of the Gospel accounts. If you're interested in the primary source evidence for Jesus' existence and why no serious scholar denies that he ever lived, I've recorded a video on that topic, which you can check out next. If you appreciated this content and would like to see more, consider subscribing to stay in the loop. That's it for now. Thanks for watching.